chocolate chip cookies for a second. I'm not talking about that packaged stuff you get at the supermarket. I'm talking about chewy, warm, scratch-made chocolate chip cookies. And you're probably like, all right, yeah, it's just flour, fat, sugar, chocolate chips, big deal. What makes it so different? I'll tell you what makes it different. Years ago, I started working at a new restaurant, and after about a month when you got settled in, you were required to trail at the pastry section for 3 consecutive days, and vice versa for new pastry employees. And this was really great because it gave all the employees a great sense of how the restaurant worked. So one day I was making chocolate chip cookies with the pastry chef, and I was looking at the recipe, and 2 things stood out to me. First thing was the butter. Usually you either have softened butter that's creamed with your sugar, or melted butter that's creamed with the sugar. This recipe called for brown butter cooled to room temperature, and then it was creamed with your sugar. And this really amplifies the flavor. And then the second thing I noticed was the flour. It called for 1 part of all-purpose flour and then bread flour. And me, like an idiot, I asked the chef, oh, this says bread flour, I think it's a mistake. And then in her head, she probably said, wow, get this guy out of here. And then she said, the bread flour has more protein in it and therefore gives the cookie a chewier texture. And those 2 things really make a difference. So those 2 things, along with a couple of other things, make these chocolate chip cookies awesome. So let's make them. We have half a cup of butter, beginning to brown. You want to keep an eye on it because it can go from brown to burnt very quickly. But if we don't brown it enough, you're not going to get that nice flavor. Another indicator is you could really start to smell that nice nutty flavor. Get that off. Put it in a separate container to cool. So after our brown butter is cooled to room temperature, you might notice that you lost a little bit. And that's because we reduced it down to brown butter and we lose some moisture. So just give it a little bit of water so it goes back to half a cup. So to our stand mixer, we're going to add half a cup of white sugar, half a cup of dark brown sugar that's packed, and we'll add our brown butter. Cream that together. You can smell the difference that the brown butter makes. And that will add 1 whole egg plus 1 yolk. And that extra yolk is going to add nice richness to these cookies, make them nice and chewy. That's incorporated. We'll add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. So for our dry ingredients, 3/4 of a cup of all-purpose flour and then 3/4 of a cup of that bread flour. If you don't have the bread flour, you can use just the all-purpose flour, but I really suggest you use the bread flour. It really makes a big difference. So to that, we're going to add 1 tablespoon of baking soda, half a teaspoon of kosher salt, and then a half a teaspoon of espresso powder. You're not going to really taste the espresso powder, but it just brings out all the flavors in these cookies. Get that in, incorporate that. Now we can take that dry mixture, fold it in with our wet mixture. A little bit at a time. And now we'll fold in half a cup or 64 grams of semi-sweet chocolate chips. And then we're going to take another half a cup or 64 grams of a good quality dark chocolate bar, something at least 60% cacao. This is 70, and we're just going to rough chop that. And it's going to give it nice, different sized chunks of chocolate throughout the cookie. So it's not just chocolate chips. You don't have to be precise. You want some larger bits in there. Fold all that. And then after we eat some of the raw cookie dough, we can put them on our trays to bake. So I got a tray lined with parchment paper, lightly greased. Our dough's ready. And now take this ice cream scoop. Scoop those on there. Make sure we leave enough room. we'll do 5 per tray. Fit that. Now, I didn't preheat my oven. There's a reason for that. It's because we're gonna let these hang out in the fridge for at least an hour, ideally overnight, and that really changes the flavor of the cookie. It really does. But I'm not waiting overnight, so I'm gonna do a good hour. But seriously, if you have the time and you could wait to eat these, even though that's very hard to do, just smelling these, let them sit overnight and you could really taste the difference. All right, let these hang out in the fridge and then we'll bake them off. So we scooped out our dough, let it set in the refrigerator for an hour, have our oven preheated to 350 degrees. Let's get these guys in the oven, finish this off. All right, so we bake these in our 350 degree oven for a little over 14 minutes. Let them hang out for a couple of minutes on the sheet trays and then put them on this wire rack for another 10 minutes, let them cool. So these are looking really good. They smell really good. And yeah, this looks really, really good. I'm gonna have to try this. Do yourself a favor, stop watching this video and go make these cookies. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, do all that good stuff, but go make these cookies because they are really, really good. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.